All right, guys, so tonight's homework, whoa, I just kicked some stuff on my desk. Okay, so tonight's homework is going to be on sections 2 and 3, a brief summary, and also a look at foreshadowing, and hopefully this reminds you a little bit of what we read prior to spring break, because I know you've got some spring break brain fuzzies in your head. Shake them out, and we're getting back to work. All right, so as we read in class, we looked at Ellie and his family's deportation to Auschwitz, and he describes the trip in the cattle cars in detail. And we also are introduced to Madame Schachter, who goes insane on the cattle cars and starts to see visions of fire. And she really does a good job at scaring everybody in the cattle car so much that they eventually gag her and tie her down to try and prevent her from scaring more people. This section also ends with their arrival at Birkenau, or the arrival gate at Auschwitz. Then, the rest of this week, we're going to go on to start reading about their selection process and arrival at Auschwitz. And I do need to warn you, as I warned you with your collage project that you're working on, that you're starting to get into the more graphic side and nature of what the camps were really like. So it's an important part of learning about this whole process, but just be aware that we do need to still treat this whole process with a sense of maturity and decorum, and be prepared for, that graphic nature. Okay. So they arrive at Auschwitz and they go through the selection process, which we've already talked about with our Holocaust notes and some of the other stories that we've read and how that looked for people. Ellie definitely has a test of faith at this point in the book, because he becomes angry with God as he's forced to face the realities of the crematoriums and the destruction and brutality that goes on in the camps. So what do you need to be looking for as we read these particular units or sections of the book? So really be paying attention to the author's use of foreshadowing and how it works as a literary device and helping you to predict what's going to happen in the future of the book. What other literary devices do you notice? Is he using any similes or metaphors or other descriptive pieces to help the book along? Also start identifying some of the main events in the story that start to change his belief or his faith. And then what kind of conflict are you starting to notice within the novel? Is there internal conflict, external conflict, man versus nature, man versus society, all of those kinds of good pieces that we've talked about in the past. And also try and see if you can empathize with pieces or sections of the novel. I have given you my own personal sections that I connect to and what it makes me think of, especially those scenes with the mother and Sephora, his little sister, especially the fact that he talks about her blonde hair and how little she is. I, of course, think of My Little Miss Molly. So what kind of connections can you make with this novel? All right, so now we're going to move on to a foreshadowing activity. I'm really trying to take a deeper look at how the novel is using this particular literary device. So foreshadowing, again, if you don't remember from our extensive study of the LA vocab packet, is the use of clues to suggest or hint at events that have not yet occurred. So this week, we will read the section. Actually, we read this prior to spring break. So we read the piece about Madame Schachter and the episode in the cattle cars, and as well as the introduction to the brutality of the Hungarian police as well as the Nazi Gestapo. So in your notes, you're going to create a chart. I have it on the next slide. And I want you to try and identify the examples that the chart is kind of foreshadowing. This is going to use your previous knowledge and information on implicit underlying meaning of the text and what that could be hinting, or how this literary device of foreshadowing is hinting at a deeper understanding of what's coming in the novel. So this is going to be a little bit more difficult. So think about what these events are hinting at and what might happen as we continue reading. And we'll check your answers in class tomorrow, obviously. So create this chart in your book. We've got 4 quotes from the novel. And just make like a simple T-chart. And I'm giving you some help here with some leading questions. You don't necessarily have to write the questions down, but definitely use those to help guide your answers. So our first example from the text is, we realized then that we were not going to stay in Hungary. Our eyes were opened, but too late. So what does he mean when he says our eyes were opened too late? What is that hinting at for the future? As well as what we've already noticed in the previous bit of the text when he talks about the fellow villagers from his town. Okay, so example from the text number 2. Of course, pause if you want to answer real quick and then start the video again as we continue on. So, the 2 disappeared. The doors clanked shut. We had fallen into the trap up to our necks. The doors were nailed. The way back irrevocably cut off. The world had become a hermetically sealed cattle car. So, what is this hinting at in the future? What does hermetically sealed mean? Include that in your answer for me, please. Again, pause if you need to. Okay, our third quote, fire, I see a fire. I'm not going to scream it like I do in class, but what is the author hinting at here? I gave you the answer in class, so think back prior to spring break in what we talked about. As she went on howling, she was struck again. Only with great difficulty did we succeed in quieting her down. What does this brutality towards Schachter hint at for the future? Think about what we know is coming. Okay, as soon as you've answered those questions, you are now done with the homework for today. We'll answer and look at those questions on the foreshadowing in class. And don't forget to do the digital whisk. Hopefully more of you have accomplished today's homework so we can have a good discussion. And I'll see you tomorrow.